What of all the progressive policies that are being talked about right now, which one do you like the most, or are you most excited about?
Well, it's not. The problem is it's not being talked about. It's the whole nuclear policy. You'll see in my book here, we would not be alive today if it weren't for a person by the name of Vasily Arkhipov, a Russian naval officer who was able to. I don't know if anybody's seen the movie Crimson Tide. Well, that was a takeoff on the actual event of Vasily Arkhipov, where he was able to browbeat the submarine commanders and their staff into not unleashing a nuclear torpedo. That after Kennedy and Khrushchev had made their deal, that this torpedo would have annihilated the flotilla that was surrounding Cuba. And that would have meant that Kennedy would have had to respond, and Khrushchev. And so we would have the world would have been incinerated back then. I was 32 years old at the time, and my life was in their hands. And the guy that did it was Vasily Arkhipov. You can look him up on WikiLeaks, and you'll see the whole history of him.
Wow.
Vasily Arkhipov.
Look him up, guys. Vasily Arkhipov.
Yeah, the reason why, it hits me at home. I would not have been alive if it hadn't been, because we have several accidents. And so what we've got to do is, as I was pointing out earlier, we're spending trillions of dollars on improving our nuclear capability when it's insanity. The other issue that I'm totally concerned about is we could destroy the planet by accident with our nuclear capability. We are destroying the planet not by accident, but by force of will, with
the oil companies.
No, the nuclear, not nuclear. Excuse me for the senior moment. The climate change. That's the two major areas that are destroying the planet is nuclear and climate change. One is going to take longer, but once we begin to feel the pinch of resources that are not available to people get violent. I can recall when we had the gas problem in the late 70s. There are people that killed other people at the gas station so they could get their gas.
Wow.
Well, that's just the tip of the iceberg.
Yeah.
Now, imagine when you don't have enough water, where you're losing erosion. It'll be a cruel death, and of course, it'll be a cruel death with nuclear, because what will happen is we'll eclipse the sun for decades, and so we'll die a cruel, terrible death. So, and these policies are being dealt with right now with our leadership. You wonder, what the hell is their thinking that when you hear a general like Mattis, who's made statements which are terrible, and he was the adult in the room with Trump. So give
Scary
me,
thought, yeah.
Oh, very, very. And it's these military leaders. We got more generals and admirals right now than we had during the Second World War, when we had 13 million people in their arms. So it's the military-industrial complex. Why do we have to make all these weapons? I'll give you an interesting one. Trump went to a factory, and I think it was in Ohio. It was where they make tanks. Okay, now, and so what is in manufacturing? We're making tanks. We got 6,000 tanks, and they're still making more. It would be more economically if they just made cars and gave them away.
Right.
6,000 tanks. Where are we going to get into a land war?
Right.
when we've just created a command, space command.
Yeah, what do you think about the Space Force?
It's suicidal. Here, we got a plan. We've been working on here. They now made it a military command, but we've been working on this for many, many years. In fact, I just want to say, whenever you hear about China and Russia doing all these things, we've been doing them before they did. Remember when, 10 years ago, we were listening to Angela Merkel's phone calls?
Yeah.
Now, you're telling me that, that the Chinese are bad or the Russians are bad? I mean, what about ourselves?
Right.
So I forget the point I was, oh yeah, the Space Command. What we learned, and this is a decade old, what we learned is if you had any explosion in space, what's going to happen to the satellites? They'll get all off course. We'll go blind. We're all technologically dependent upon satellites in space. And so now when you start talking about, well, they're doing bad things in space, but we don't do bad things. Hell, we've been doing bad things in space. And so when somebody says, well, we have to have a military presence so we can fight in space, there's no fighting in space. We're going to blind everybody. That's essentially what's going to happen. And we're all going to lose our jobs because there's no electricity. This is what our planners and our leaders do as a matter of course.
Yeah.
And don't doubt it for a minute that the budget, the defense budget, they pack everything in there. And if you don't vote for it as a member of the Senate or the House, you're unpatriotic. You're doing away with our defense. And I hope that when you get there, Rebecca, that you vote to cut it.
I will. Yeah.
We were asked. Robert McNamara, one of the brighter persons that we had, is unfortunately involved in the Vietnam War, but a very bright person, was asked several years after he left office, is how much could we cut the defense budget without impairing our security? He said 50%. And I agree with that. With what knowledge I have of the budgetary process and what's going on, it's like we could stop making tanks. We don't need more than 6,000 tanks.
Yeah.
So we could cut the military budget by 50% and be better off. We'd have a better defense because we know just from experience that when you throw money wantonly at a problem, it doesn't necessarily solve the problem. You've got to reason it out and not just rely on a bunch of easy money.
Mm-hmm. Well, somebody asked. So
you
we
got
talked
enough light in here?
I think so. Yeah. Thank you. Or do you want me to get it?
Yeah, the other one.
Oh, there we go.
Okay.
Why did you first get into politics? Why did you leave behind private business?
I was 15 years old. I was working as a soda jerk, and I'm dyslexic, so I don't read very well, and so I had problems in school. But I was charming enough that the nuns in the 8th grade gave me a medal for being the most charming guy. So I couldn't read very well, but so I was working as a soda jerk, and a local politician from Boston, I was in Massachusetts, came in and asked if I would help pass out brochures. And so he left me a stack. And I took my task. I was a serious person as a young person, as an adult. And so I passed out these things very assiduously. Now, a lot of people take these, the guy's gone, and throw it in the sewer, and that's the end of the story. And so, no, this guy comes back a month later, and he had a sense of what was going on in the constituency, and I had passed out every bit of literature he gave me. So when he turned around, he said, "Would you help me some more?" And I said, "Yes." So he turned around and put $10 on the counter to pay me for my time. And here I'm 15 years old. 10 years well, that'd be 45. That's a lot of money. But what got me more than the money was the recognition. Man, I was important if I had a state representative come in and ask me to help him. And so what happened after that, I worked in everybody's campaign that were what I would call liberal progressives. I didn't work with the Republicans. And so from 15, when I was in the service, I worked in politics in Europe. When I was in New York going to Columbia, I was working in Tammany Hall to get the feeling of that. And so I've always been a political animal in that regard. And there was always a hope in the future that I would be able to run for office. And so I did run for office, and I was very progressive. And it's an interesting situation. I got to Alaska, I was dead broke. And 12 years later, I'm sitting in the United States Senate. And all I can say is work hard and be lucky. You have to be lucky. But a lot of times by working hard, you make the luck. And so work hard and be lucky. Rebecca, that's my wisdom to you.
Thank you.
And your friends who are listening,
Yeah.
if they'll work their hearts out to get you elected, I think it will be a very positive thing for the country.
Thank you.
And then I'll be working to get direct democracy. And
Yeah.
You can once you're in office, you can endorse my plan.
Yeah. Yeah. So we've talked about who you want for president. Who would you predict will win the nomination?
Well, it's a tough one. I know that the Democratic Party is going to try to sabotage Bernie, and so I'm concerned about that. But I would predict I would predict and say that I think Bernie's going to win, and I hope he'll select Tulsi for vice president. But if he doesn't win, if he's denied, and what's his name, Joe Biden wins, I wouldn't vote for Joe Biden. I'd probably vote for the Green Party. And I feel very deeply about it. I voted last time for the Green Party because I knew Hillary Clinton was a flawed candidate.
Yeah.
I wonder, did I answer that question?
You did, yeah, thank you. And that's interesting. So you're not a vote. This probably goes without, I don't need to ask this, but you're not a vote blue no matter who.
Oh, God, no. Well, that goes back to the point I was making with you.
Yeah.
And that is, my party right or wrong. When my party is right, I support it. When my party is wrong, I oppose it with every ounce. So when you say that Joe Biden gets in, I would not vote for him for the very simple reason that it will be politics as usual. And that's why the people voted for Trump, because they were fed up with politics as usual. And so if we go back to that, we may get somebody, we'll get rid of Trump, I think, but we may wind up with somebody later on who is like Trump, but with a brain. And that's dangerous.
Right. I think we're going to wrap it up now, folks.
Yeah, so we could go.